thing that really brought out the white power structure against us was the historic sit-in at Franklin High School, May 29th, 1968. Nothing rattled Seattle like that sit-in at Franklin did. And the background on that sit-in was that the principal had not been willing to recognize the Black Student Union at Franklin. Remember, we had been charged in January with organizing Black student unions on high school and junior high campuses. And in January, by the end of January, we had organized BSU at Garfield, Franklin, Rainier Beach, and Cleveland high schools. We had organized Black student unions at the junior high level at Washington, Meany, Asa Mercer, and Sharpless, all, as you note, inner city organizations. However, because High Point is out in West Seattle and a lot of Black students went to Chief Sealth, we had organized a Black student union at Chief Sealth High School too. And they were organized. They were trying to get their principals to recognize them. They wanted to put their heroes in the hallway, Huey P. Newton, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, instead of having all white imagery. They were demanding that that the U.S. history and world history classes include information about the Black experience in this country and worldwide. These are the things the students were pushing. And it culminated at Franklin with the principal finally kicking this is what set it off. The principal kicked 2 Black girls out of school for not looking ladylike. What crime had they done? They had worn their hair to school natural. And he said, that doesn't look ladylike, sent them home, said you can't return. And it just caused untold anger and frustration and alienation amongst the 150 Black students that were at Franklin at that time. And they wanted to tear it up. And they called us at the Black Student Union at the UW, who were their advisors, leaders, and 4 of us went down to Franklin, and we were able to focus the anger at putting together a set of demands. And we said, we'll take these demands to the principal and we will not leave his office until they are agreed to. But we would do it nonviolently and not tear up the school. And we got the students to vote, because we believed in democracy, that was something they wanted to do. And we stayed there and helped to lead the sit-in with the leadership of the Black Student Union at Franklin. That fateful day was the 29th of March. And Seattle responded by sending 65% of all the police in the police force at that time to surround Franklin High School. They didn't know how to deal with it. They had never heard. Can you imagine a sit-in in Seattle? They said that stuff happens down south, not up here. So they said something is wrong, some virus or something is infecting our Negro youth. So yeah, they sent most of the police. And at that time, Lowe's, I don't know if one of you have ever been to Lowe's in Rainier Valley. That used to be Six Stadium. There used to be a baseball stadium here in Seattle, right below Franklin. So they mobilized the entire police force in the parking lot of Six Stadium. Can you imagine? It's a baseball stadium, so they had a big parking lot. So while we were sitting in, some of our people went down there and they got a message back to us that it looked like the whole force is at Six Stadium ready to attack Franklin if y'all don't leave. And we said, we're not going to leave until our demands are met. Fortunately, Forrest Bottomley, the superintendent of Seattle Public Schools at that time, talked to the principal over the phone while we were occupying his office. And they actually agreed to the 4 demands: let the sisters back in the school who had been kicked out, hire the first Black administrator. He agreed to hire the first Black administrator at the high school level in the history of the Seattle Public Schools. 68 is not a long time ago, but we never had a Black administrator in any secondary school. There had been some at the elementary level school. To set up an African American history class, and to allow images of black heroes to be on some of the walls in the school building, alongside of Benjamin Franklin and cats like that. Very basic demands, wasn't very radical, at least not to us, but to the powers that be, it was horrific. The next morning, Charles O'Carroll, the prosecuting attorney at that time, King County prosecuting attorney, said, we've got to do something about these outside agitators and these youth troublemakers. Forrest Bottomley said, even though we tried to, come up with some changes that might be beneficial, we're very concerned about taking over the principal's office. And they showed a picture of the news where his sink had been busted. And I guess that was horrible to them. But nobody ever gotten very upset about the systematic virus of racism that infected the entire curriculum of Seattle Public Schools throughout its history, and the impact that it had on black and other youth of color, as well as white youth, think they're superior. And we pointed that out. And the mayor, Norm Brayman, said that something has to be done. So that was the reaction. As a result, on April 4th, 1968, another fateful day in the history of the United States of America, because that was the day that Martin Luther King was killed. But it was on that morning, unfortunately, that the city had decided we gotta do something about these troublemakers. And they decided that they were gonna arrest Aaron Dixon, Carl Miller, and Larry Gossett as the ringleaders of the Franklin sit-in, and charge them with unlawful assembly. And as a way of really teaching these Negro youth a lesson. So they arrested us all between 8:30 and 9:30 on the morning of April 4th and put us in the King County Jail. The three of us are now sitting in the area where, because I was on the top floor of the jail where my cell was. This used to be the King County Jail, the 10th, 11th, 12th floor of the King County Courthouse until 1986 when we built the new jail up the street. And I remember being in a cell where I could look out and see Puget Sound on the 12th floor, about where we're seated now. It's a lot of interesting symbolism in that, because we were fighting for black political empowerment, and we were arrested for that. And about 6 or 7 hours after we got in jail, news came that Martin Luther King had just been assassinated. And the black men in jail here, their concept of black power or black rage was that they wanted to beat up the white prisoners, And we said, that's crazy. And they respected us because of why we were in there. And we were all young, we were all 22 and under. And they listened to us. And we said, nah, man, don't be jumping on these white prisoners. That's crazy. Let's have a teach-in and talk about the impact of the life of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on this nation, and what it means to prisoners who've lost their basic rights and what they can do about it. So we had a teach-in about Dr. King and what prisoners should be doing to minimally still be treated as human beings, and regardless of color, throughout the whole floor. And then later that night, the word got out, we were having discussions throughout the whole jail. And by that morning, the director of the King County Jail was demanding that the three of us get put out of jail. That had never happened, where the jail commander said, get these people out of this jail. They're actually having prisoners talk and work with one another. That was outrageous to them, that prisoners would be talking about their own self-interest and what they could do collectively to exercise that. And then the next morning, it really backfired on the powers that be, because on the morning of April 5th, when we were brought to court for arraignment, first of all, they had to get a new court. They had to get the 9th, if you go down to the 9th floor of this building. We have our biggest courtroom. It holds 900 people. And it's the court of the presiding judge. On that morning, there were more black people in the King County Courthouse that had ever been in it before or since. We've never had any kind of hearing for anybody that 1,500 people have come to show their solidarity and support. And that's how many black people came when they brought us in. We were in there for a misdemeanor, but they had I think it was the three of us handcuffed around here, around our waists, around our ankles, and it was very symbolic of slavery, and some guards holding the chains about 4 feet in back of us as they brought the three of us in court. You know, like we were the coldest murderers that had ever hit Seattle, not some people that had been busted for a misdemeanor unlawful assembly charge, but that's how they saw it. These were very dangerous folks. And the judge, arguments were made, the prosecutor said, you know, maximum bail, and our lawyers argued that none of us, and it was true, none of us had ever been in jail, none of us had ever been in trouble. And there was no basis for there to be any any bail put upon and we weren't going anywhere. And we told the judge we weren't going anywhere. So we were let out on our personal recognizance. But the night before, the first night ever that there had been urban rebellion amongst black youth in Seattle, and maybe $1 million worth of property damage was done all over the central area, and down by Lake Washington, boats and stuff were burned, and there was a lot of violence. It wasn't as much the night that we got out, because they did let us out. But what it did for the BSU is hundreds of black students wanted to join all over the city. We couldn't, the rooms that we had, they were just too small to handle all the black students. 2 weeks later, on April 16th, Bobby Seale, the chairman of the Black Panther for Self-Defense, came to Seattle because we had gone to another black student union conference at San Francisco State on March 15th to 19th during the spring break. And we had met Bobby Seale, and we had been invited over to Oakland to attend the funeral of the first Black Panther ever killed. Little Bobby Hutton was his name, and serving the people was his claim to fame. But we were immensely impressed with the discipline and the solidarity and the youthfulness of the Black Panther Party on that visit. Because we went to Oakland and we saw, to his funeral, and we saw about 1,000 black men and women in leather coats and black berets and shades, and very disciplined as revolutionaries, talking about they will continue to work for Black Power, they will continue to work for revolutionary change. And our youth that we took to that conference got real excited about the potential for starting a chapter of the Black Panther Party in Seattle. And Bobby Seale was impressed enough that he made a commitment that he would visit Seattle and make a determination as to whether or not Seattle would be the first city to gain a chapter of the Black Panthers outside the state of California. And when he visited, he was dutifully impressed. And on April 16th, Bobby Seale authorized the development of a chapter here in Seattle, Washington, making Seattle the first city outside of California to have a chapter. But what the Franklin sit-in and our arrest had is that hundreds of black youth were attracted from April to June to the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They had more people than they could actually handle wanting to join it. And that was because, in my estimation, of the repression of the white power structure, thinking that they could kill this movement by arresting its leaders. And in turn, they only inspired and motivated its growth.